Hi guys, and welcome to our video about our 3-day and 2-night trip in Kuala Lumpur. We visit the most famous sites in the city, so you can use this guide as a reference if you're planning your own trip to KL. We're currently living in Singapore, and we saw both similarities and differences while visiting the Malaysian capital. It was pretty late by the time we got to KL, so we opted to take a Grab to the city center. In hindsight, the train might actually be the way to go. We took it on the way back to Singapore and it was very convenient. We arrived pretty late in KL, so we checked into our hotel and then went right across the street to a food truck area. We would have gone to the malls, but they're all closed. However, these food trucks had some pretty good options. You can see here they have a lot of the staples of KL or Malaysian food, and the prices we found were actually pretty close to what you would find in food courts and food centers, hawker centers in Singapore, perhaps a little bit cheaper than the hawker centers that we usually get this food at. I'll probably pronounce this wrong, but I was having nasi soup, which was like a soup, and mee salap, which was a bit sweeter than expected, but overall pretty good. Here we are actually checking back into our room. The Pullman is an older hotel, but it's well maintained, and I'd actually recommend it. It has all the usual facilities, including a pool and also a gym. It was too hot during the day for me to use the pool, and the pool surprisingly closed pretty early, I want to say around 7 p.m., so I didn't get to use that. But the gym was actually pretty well equipped for a hotel gym in my experience. Here's the start of day 1 of our trip, and we get an extra early start here to go to the Batu Caves. Here's a few shots of the skyline of Bukit Bintang. You'll see our hotel on the left here, Pullman, and just behind it is a glimpse of the Petronas Towers. There were quite a few nice high-end hotels in this area. You can see the Westin, JW Marriott. It's quite a popular place for both business travelers and tourists. I do recommend this area. It's accessible to most of KL, especially being center. It helps when you need to get to different places across the city. From the skyline, you can tell there's quite a few activity going on in KL as far as building new hotels and condos. It's one of the few places in Southeast Asia even foreigners can buy landed property. You can see a Petronas Tower pretty clearly in the distance here. We're on our way here to the Batu Caves, which isn't too far from the center of the city. The statue in front of the Batu Caves definitely leaves an impression when you first see it, as well as the multicolored steps in front of the caves. If you're afraid of pigeons, I might recommend skipping the caves entirely, and also skipping this next scene since there's quite a few. At the base of the stairs there's a gate, but there isn't an admission fee, you can just go straight up. There's around 272 steps to get to the top. I wouldn't recommend this if you have significant mobility issues. It isn't that easy, pretty steep, and there's also monkeys along the way. To make matters worse for us, it had just rained, so the steps were a little bit slippery from that as well. At the top you'll find a gift shop and also a convenience store where you can just buy some drinks and snacks. There's a large statue in front of the cave, around 43 meters in height. It's symbolizing Murugan, the Hindu god of war. One good decision we made was we went up early on the stairs, around 8 AM. It wasn't too hot when we were heading up. The actual cave is huge, as you can see. There's a temple, at least the size of the temple outside, and then also a smaller area upstairs. You'll see some bats flying around on the upper parts of the cave, as well as some drops from the moisture falling from the ceiling. The main cave is actually known as Cathedral Cave or Temple Cave, and it houses several Hindu shrines and is a popular place of worship. It's quite impressive to see just how vast the cave is at the top when you're looking down into the main area and also the temple down below. As we're heading down, we notice there are more tourist groups now since we came pretty early. I'd recommend going early to avoid the rush. You can see the monkeys here. It's recommended to keep your belongings on you. They've been known to steal things, including cell phones and wallets. The top of the cave itself offers a bit of a view of KL, but it's well outside the city center, being 13 kilometers away. Here's some of the surroundings of the cave as seen by a drone from the parking lot. You can see there's quite a few restaurants at the base of the cave for tourists after they finish exploring. After the caves, we decided to go to this famous nasi lemak place, which is highly recommended. Even my friend from KL recommended this place. It's also famous with locals and tourists alike. The nasi lemak was definitely excellent, especially considering the affordable price. Compared to Singapore, it's hard to find this kind of nasi lemak at this price point. The kaya butter toast was excellent here as well, not too much butter, just the way I like it. When you watch the kitchen, you see just how many orders they're filling and how fast the staff has to work. Besides diners, there's a queue of at least 30 to 40 riders outside waiting for online delivery orders. Considering how busy the place was, it's impressive they managed to service all the diners and the food delivery orders at the same time. This is definitely a more local side to Kuala Lumpur, which is well outside the city center. Our next stop is Merdeka Square. This is where Malaysia gained its independence from the British. You can see a monument established here to mark the occasion. At 95 meters or 311 feet, this is one of the tallest flagpoles in the world. It was actually almost higher than where my drone was allowed to fly. There is a building and also a mosque across the street that is for Sultan Abdul Samad. In contrast to Bukit Bintang, this area is known more for its historical significance, and there are a number of historical landmarks in the vicinity. Merdeka Tower, the tall building in the distance, will be the tallest building in the world besides the Burj Khalifa when it's completed. There's another view of the Petronas Towers in the background here as well. From this point, the video will feature some sounds from the street level just to give a taste of what Kuala Lumpur sounds like. building across the street is known as the Royal Selangor Club. It used to be active as a social club for the British. However, it's open to all now and is still active to this day. If you'd like, you could also opt to go near the flagpole as well as the cricket grounds, but it was too hot for us today. After checking out the Merdeka Square area, we went to the Kuala Lumpur City Gallery. This gallery features information about the history of Kuala Lumpur, including a model of the city, some exhibits about the development of the city throughout the time, and also this cool series about how the city was founded. This slide here tells the story of a Chinese farmer who's attributed with transforming Kuala Lumpur from a mining area to a town. The story reminded me a little bit about San Francisco because it had a similar explosion during the gold rush era. I found this pond and I didn't think anything was in it at first, but then we saw a lot of turtles actually in the pond. I wonder if they ever get hot since they're baking under the sun all day. As part of the city gallery, there's actually a large cafeteria here which has pastries. At the back of the pastry shop, there were also souvenirs here which were part of the city gallery. The name Kuala Lumpur actually refers to a confluence of muddy rivers, and you can see here the mosque is in the intersection of two rivers. Moving on, we head into the Central Market. I think this is actually really worth seeing if you want to see how traditional goods are made, and also just an example of the urban and the old-fashioned parts of Kuala Lumpur colliding. The Central Market itself is located inside this building. It features many different stalls that are selling various goods here. It was a weekend and it was really busy, so there were tons of tourists and also locals just looking around. I thought the shop was pretty interesting. It had some funny catchphrases on its items. The shop called Bathing Taper was pretty interesting since they were selling soaps. Taper is something that's found commonly in the region, especially in rivers, but I doubt they actually take baths, which is ironic. As we went through this area, I was reminded more and more of Bugis in Singapore. It has a similar concept. Bugis is actually an area that's inspired by Malay culture as well in Singapore, so it's not surprising there would be similarities. Besides the dedicated stores, there are also stalls on the right side of the street where you can find various arts and craft vendors. Apparently, Pasar Besar means big market in Malay. It makes sense since this is the central market. It's probably the biggest market in the area where you can find quite a lot of goods for sale. After exploring the market, we were pretty hungry, so we picked up some chendol. This is one of the dishes that's pretty famous in Southeast Asia, especially in Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, and so we had to try it from here. The exterior of the building looks kind of like an Art Deco building back in the US. In LA, we do have markets as well in downtown where you can get various goods. After finishing in Central Market, we took a walk towards the next market, which is Petaling Street Market. We went through this area, which has some stalls as well. It seems these shops mainly sold to tourists, so they had things like food, baked goods that tourists might be interested in. Just a short walk away is another major market, Petaling Street Market, which we're walking to through this area. The entrance to Petaling Street Market is marked by this gate. You can cross here, and it's actually located in the area's Chinatown. Singapore also has a Chinatown. It's located near the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple. This area reminded me a little bit of the Chinatown there. We also actually have a covered walkway as well. The vendors in our experience were not actually too aggressive. Some of them wanted you to check out your stuff, but if you said no, they'd let you keep walking. I learned this area might be better to visit at night because there's more food vendors. So if you do plan your visit, perhaps visit this at night, since during the day it seemed like there were just some stalls for goods, and if you weren't interested in shopping, there wasn't as much to do for that. The market also reminded me of our time in Malacca because there was a similar market. It's in the third day of our video, I believe. Actually, it also reminded me of Hat Yai, which is actually a city in southern Thailand, but because it's so close to Malaysia, it takes heavy influences from the culture here as well. We would have checked out the market more, but at this time it started raining, so we headed back to the hotel instead. If you're unlucky in KL, the main throughways can be pretty crowded, and when everyone's trying to get a grab, it may be harder to get back. After a brief period of waiting out the rain, we went to our next destination, which was towards the Jalan Alor food street. We were originally planning to stay in this area, but because of some points I had with the hotel, we chose to stay near the pavilion instead. Since it was a bit too early still for the night market, we went to get a massage here in this local mall. Currently, the mall across the street is more focused on IT and electronics. If you've seen my video on Siloam Square, it's similar to that. We headed inside this mall, Sungei Wang, instead to get a massage. It seemed pretty similar to any of the malls that were Strata malls in Singapore. The stores are pretty random. You've probably been here for a while. But it was fairly well kept, I'll say, compared to even the ones in Singapore. Malls like Beauty World and before it changed, Golden Mile were pretty similar to this one. Now here's inside the Plaza, which is the IT electronics focused place. You can see here I was looking for a deal on cameras, but in my experience, goods are actually cheaper in Singapore than they are in most other countries, including in Malaysia. This was a nice area called Commons KL, which featured a bunch of restaurants. They were kind of nicer and had some outdoor seating. I think next time we come to KL we might stop by here because it actually looked nice. If you're sensitive to strobing lights, I would recommend skipping this next part in Jalan Alor Food Street. There were some old lights which ran on a different frequency and they flicker like crazy. This food street was absolutely packed. It reminded me of a bigger version of the one in Malacca, actually, Yonkers Street. I liked this one better because there's actually more outdoor seating. You can kind of just grab a seat in one of the restaurants on the side and just watch the atmosphere. We ended up eating at this restaurant here. They served a pretty large menu of both seafood and chicken and other types of food, so it worked for us. The currency is roughly 3 to 1 with Singapore. I would say the prices were not actually that much cheaper than Singapore. Maybe the prices are catered to tourists in this area, and that would explain why it wasn't as cheap. I'd say this place is a can't miss though in KL, all things considered. It's got a great outdoor vibe, great food, and it's just a good representation of life here in the city. We ended up getting some fried rice and vegetable kangkong, as well as some grilled fish, and also some chicken, which was pictured later on. The entire area is filled with smoke from all of the cooking, so if you are bothered by smoke, this entire area is filled with it, although since it's not cigarettes, it may be less offensive than that. This was an extremely long day in this trip, but it wasn't over yet. We're actually checking out Berjaya Times Square, which is one of the older but larger malls in the area. It actually has a theme park inside it, and it's probably one of the biggest malls I've been in. It's got a theme of New York, so they have Central Park, then they have an East and West Wing representing Upper East Side and then Lower West Side. And then they have the theme park, of course, which is integrated into the structure of the mall. I thought that was actually pretty unique. Genting Highlands is near KL and is also an integrated gambling, theme park, and shopping destination. So it seems this might be a thing in Malaysia. Genting also operates Resorts World Sentosa, which is a theme park mixed resort on Sentosa in Singapore. They also have a resort in Las Vegas as well. Fortunately, it seems like we came too late to see the theme park in action, and it closed relatively early. So we weren't able to see any of the rides or try any of the attractions. So I'd recommend to visit this mall earlier in the day if you plan to check out the theme park. The mall is around 7 or 8 stories high in most places, with the theme park being a bit higher. And it makes sense since land is quite condensed and packed in KL. The mall was pretty empty since it was near closing time. My girlfriend actually had some nails done during this time, so I was wandering around and I got a chance to see most of the mall. It's pretty different from the malls in Singapore in terms of the stores available. There are some that are similar, but I think Malaysia has its own chains and stores that are unique. So this ended our first day in KL. We have 2 more days left on this trip. We're definitely happy to get back to the hotel and rest up for day 2.